Hi guys, Dominic Cummings, the former advisor, had some interesting things to say about Brexit and Jeremy Corbyn when he was giving evidence to the inquiry. He knew that in 2019 Boris Johnson was damaged goods. He knew that he was unfit to run the country, but for some reason believed that this would have been better than allowing the British people to have a second referendum on Brexit or to allow Jeremy Corbyn into number 10. It's interesting that Cummings has never come out after and said he was wrong on either of these, while admitting at the same time that Johnson and his government's handling of the pandemic was pretty poor. So Brexit was worth it, even if it meant putting the worst person in charge during a pandemic. Have a listen.
But even after that general election, in the early days of the administration in January 2020, as you subsequently told journalists, you said we were having meetings in number 10. By the summer, either we'll all have gone from here, or we will be in the process of trying to get rid of him and get someone else in as Prime Minister. Did you say that?
Yeah.
So you helped to put into power and to sustain someone who was, in your view, and I emphasise it's your view, the inquiry's reached no view, somebody who was unfit to respond to the extraordinary difficult demands of a pandemic.
Correct.
Are you sorry?
No, because I think that you have to, politics is about choices. And the choice that we had in summer 2019 was, do we allow the whole situation, this once-century constitutional crisis to continue, melt down and possibly see Jeremy Corbyn as PM and a second referendum on Brexit, which we thought would be catastrophic for the country and for democracy and for faith in democracy, or to roll the dice on Boris and to try and control him and build a team around him that could control him. And that was we didn't take that choice lightly. We considered in summer 19 an alternative of staying out of it. But we thought the combination of second referendum and Corbyn was so bad that we should roll the dice.
Roll the dice. It's all a game to these people. And the fact that he mentioned that he wanted to build a team around Boris Johnson and control him. And then, well, when they believed that they couldn't control him anymore, they would replace him. These are the people in power. The advisors. They're not giving advice to the Prime Minister. They're steering the Prime Minister in a particular direction. And before I get to the Brexit part, it's interesting that in the middle of 2020, there was an opportunity to postpone Brexit to focus on the pandemic, and Boris Johnson didn't do that, probably following the advice of Dominic Cummings at the time. Now, let's look at the alternative. Jeremy Corbyn is in charge. Jeremy Corbyn is Prime Minister. Does anyone honestly believe, and you can, even his harshest critics, does anyone honestly believe that Jeremy Corbyn would have avoided Cobra meetings at the beginning of the pandemic? That he would have ignored the advice of SAGE and the experts? That he would have avoided going into a lockdown, according to the advice of SAGE? Does anyone honestly believe that Jeremy Corbyn would have come out of lockdown early because he was afraid for the economy? Allegedly, what Boris Johnson said. Does anyone believe that Jeremy Corbyn's party would have been full of headbangers who would have been denying the value of lockdowns or suggesting that we need to get out as soon as possible to save the economy? Does anyone honestly believe that? Does anyone honestly believe that Jeremy Corbyn would have been worse than Boris Johnson? I don't think even his harshest critics would, but it seems that Dominic Cummings here believes he would. But then Dominic Cummings is a liar and a charlatan. Now, on the Brexit angle, this is just amazing. So he's suggesting here that if we didn't get Boris Johnson in charge if we didn't get him back into number 10 after an election, there could have been a second referendum. And this would have undermined democracy. This is a guy who was part of a campaign that lied to people, that convinced people to vote against their own interests. Dominic Cummings. This is a Brexiteer. He's still a Brexiteer. So, the idea that we need to convince people to vote for something that's against their interests, we need to use lies and manipulation in order to achieve that. And this, of course, is a demonstration of democracy. So in 2016, the vote to leave the European Union was a demonstration of democracy. So why would another referendum be not a demonstration of democracy? If referendums are a demonstration of democracy, then surely another one, when people have a bit more information, would be just, again, a demonstration of democracy. But no, for Brexiteers like Dominic Cummings and others, no, a second referendum was a bad idea because that would be undermining democracy in some way. You know, once again, people were lied to. People were convinced that things would get better as soon as the UK voted to leave. The economy would improve. But fundamental, of course, was that this was about taking back control of something. This was about, in reality, for many voters, it was about giving the government a bloody nose. The Remainer establishment needed to be taught a lesson. And for many people, they voted for Brexit because they wanted to give David Cameron's government a bloody nose. Many people voted for Brexit because they thought it would take back control of immigration. They thought that it would boost the economy. But by 2019, more and more people were either sitting on the fence or more and more people were switching sides. They believed that Brexit was a mistake. Now, in 2019, it wasn't guaranteed that a second referendum would result in stopping Brexit, but there was a chance. Unfortunately, many of the parties were not fully behind that. But just think about it for a moment. An alternative situation where Jeremy Corbyn was Prime Minister during the pandemic. In Dominic Cummings' eyes, that would have been worse. And a second referendum that would have avoided, potentially, all the problems that are facing British people today, the ending of freedom of movement, the problems with getting access to workers, and the problems facing imports and exports, would have disappeared. But for Dominic Cummings and Brexiteers like him, that would have been worse than what this current situation is. Once again, back to the main point here that he raised himself. It's all a game. Rolling the dice. Putting people in charge that they are able to manipulate, and once they've run out of steam, change. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.